Well, to no surprise, the Mariners struggled to score against Tariq Skubal last night. However, they were still in striking distance with an inning to play and Skubal out of the game, yet Scott Servais played it as if they were down 10. Our thoughts on that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, August 8th, 2024. This is Tiny Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to talk about last night's 6-2 loss to the Tigers and specifically how that ninth inning was handled by Scott Servais. There's also multiple reports indicating that Julio Rodriguez could DH upon his return from the injured list, so we'll give you our thoughts on that, as well as tonight's series finale with Detroit. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So, of course, last night, the Mariners were hard-pressed to score runs against Tariq Skubal, who, of course, is the favorite right now to win the American League Cy Young. I would say it's either him or Corbin Burns. Cal Raleigh had a 2-run home run. That was it for the Mariners offense, but Cal tried to carry the team on his back last night, almost hit another 2-run home run, which this time around would have been of the go-ahead variety. In the 8th inning, but that, of course, was robbed by Parker Meadows with a great catch over the right center field wall. So that was brutal to watch, of course. But apparently even more so for Scott Servais. Apparently that just crushed his spirit, that crushed his soul, and that crushed any chances of winning that ball game for him with the way that he handled that 9th inning, because he had Andres Munoz warming up in the bullpen. He was ready to go. But instead, Servais went to Jonathan Hernandez, who they just picked up off of the street a few days ago. And as I think most of you would assume, that did not go particularly well. Tigers ended up adding 3 runs of insurance, making it 6-2. And that all but killed the Mariners' chances of winning that game. And this is yet another example, specifically when it comes to 2024 Scott Servais, of Servais's unwillingness to use his best guys down a run, down 2 runs, to try and keep things close. He is unwilling to use his best guys unless the game is tied or they have the lead. And this has been exemplified on way more than one occasion over the course of this season. And to me, it is definitively, I think for some it would be arguable, but to me it's definitively his biggest flaw as an end-game manager, specifically this year. Because to me, it comes off as he is playing for the moment, the situation that may or may not exist, folks. And right now with 50 or so games, however many left we have, in the heat of a division race, which is your only path to making the playoffs this year, only realistic path to making the playoffs this year, it seems. Every game matters. Every pitch matters. Not to be too cliche, but that's really the point that we're at, especially with how flawed this offense still is, even after the trade deadline. And the only inning that matters to me, as long as the game is close, is the one you're playing right now. And Scott Servais clearly doesn't agree with that, at least with the way that he handled last night.
It's a really weird situation because Munoz was ready. He was hot. He was ready to go. If, Parker Meadows doesn't make that incredible catch, he's in the game. So why wouldn't you just use him, keep it a 3-2 game, and then you would still have 5, 6, 7 coming up and a chance to win that game or tie the game and get into extras. And if you get into extras, Jimmy Garcia is still available out there. So it's not like you didn't have another high leverage arm out in your pen that you could use. So it's just a very odd decision, and it felt like a decision that you might make in April if Munoz had pitched the day before and threw 20 pitches, and you're like, like
Yeah.
maybe if we tie it, Munoz can go today, but we're not going to use him down because he's not feeling great, or he threw a lot yesterday. Munoz hasn't thrown in 3 days, so that's not really a thing last night. So it's just incredibly disappointing, and it's to top it off, you go to Jonathan Hernandez, who you picked up off the scrap heap a few days ago. You pick up, and then you go, and then you still have a shot to get out of there with a chance to win that game. After Hernandez struggles, you can still go to Munoz, and he can get you a couple of strikeouts, and you can get out of that situation and have a shot to win the game. Instead, they go to Trent Thornton, and Thornton and Saucedo have been, objectively, they've been trash for the last month or so out on the mound, and so they went to 2 of their 3 worst guys down by a run instead of going to their best guy who hasn't pitched in 2 days down by a run with a chance to somehow, steal a game that really nobody thought you were going to win anyways. After dropping the game, you needed to win the night before. So it doesn't make sense. Like it's go time right now. Like you are in a sprint to the finish. This idea like, oh, well, we want to make sure we have them for tomorrow. It's like, well, you probably still do, even if you put them out there today. But what if you don't need them tomorrow? What if the Mariners win tonight 8-0? You just win an entire series without.
What if they get smoked tonight? Right.
And so this idea that like, oh, well, what if it's a close game tomorrow type of thing? It's like, well, it's we're creeping up on the middle of August here, and you have one path to the playoffs, and it's essentially a tie right now. Like you are in a sprint mode now. It's unfortunate that George didn't do his job. He only went 5 innings last night, and so you kind of had to use Chargois earlier. You had to use Snyder earlier than maybe you wanted to. So there are some ramifications of Kirby facing a quad A lineup and getting lit up a little bit. Like there are some ramifications to that that probably factor in here. But you got to the 9th. You had Munoz available. You had a shot to win the game somehow. Right. And so whether you anticipated that or not, it doesn't matter. It's go time. Every game that you can win, you should be putting your best foot forward to win, because there are going to be games with 47 left to go anyways, where it's like, oh, you know what? Miller didn't have it today. He gave up 5 or 6 in 5 innings, and we're down 5-1 here in the 6th. Like, all right, like that's going to happen. Yeah. So you're going to have games like that where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to use Munoz today, clearly. So, I don't understand it. And what usually ends up happening, or what seems to usually end up happening, is you say, I want to save him just in case we need him tomorrow. And then you end up having to use that guy anyways because he hasn't pitched in 3 or 4 days. And you're like, oh, well, he needs the work. And you end up using him in a 6-2 game. And you're like, what's the point? So, just incredibly disappointing. That thing, it is worth noting that a lot of these decisions are made pregame, and it is a collective. It's not just Scott, doing things by his gut or whatever. But obviously the decision tree, or however they broke down the usage last night, is broken, and it needs to be tweaked because it's go time right now. Like,
it doesn't really matter who is ultimately responsible here, but Scott is the figurehead. Scott is the guy that has the final say on these things. So it does still fall a lot on Scott Servais, and it's inexcusable. Inexcusable mismanagement in a key game, and every game from here on out, by the way, folks, is key, especially with how tight the American League West race is. Yep. And look, Jerry DiPoto talked about this. Justin Hollander talked about this. I'm pretty sure Scott even talked about this during the offseason of how important every single game is because of how many seasons this has come down to the wire for the Mariners and how they have missed the playoffs by 1, 2, 3-ish games. And they've had a chance in the last series to make the playoffs, and more often than not, they have failed to push this thing across the finish line. So you need to act like it, right? This isn't just an April thing where, oh, we need to start out hotter in April and May, like they talked about this offseason. It's, okay, once you get into the situation now, you can't just mess around. You can't act like, oh, well, it's cool. We can afford to lose this game. No, you can't. You cannot afford to lose any single game that you have a chance to win. So the way that situation was handled last night, terrible, inexcusable, complete mismanagement of the situation at hand for a theoretical moment, right? That never came to pass, right? Mm-hmm. And look, you can say, well, what do you do if, you did use Munoz and then you did get the lead and then, or you did tie things up and then you needed someone to pitch the 10th, right? Obviously, if you got the lead, that would have been a walk-off. But if you tied things up and you needed someone to pitch the 10th, okay, I have Jimmy Garcia. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll just cross that bridge when I get to it.
Right. Also, it doesn't matter. Like, even if Garcia wasn't available yesterday, it's like, what do I do if I go into the 10th? You figure it out.
Right.
Because you're in the 10th.
I'd rather go down with the ship than not even try at all, right? Because this was essentially like putting Jonathan Hernandez in that game. No offense to Jonathan Hernandez, and I understand why they like him, and I think maybe there's a path there to getting something out of Jonathan Hernandez. But that wasn't the time to use him. You were essentially waving the white flag when you put Jonathan Hernandez into that game. And I get it's not a great Tigers lineup. That's a lineup that he should be able to get through. Doesn't matter. You had the chance to use Munoz, who, again, like Colby said, hadn't been used in a couple of days. You had the chance to use Jimmy Garcia in that situation. You didn't. And you ultimately, whether or not they were actually going to be able to score in the bottom of the ninth doesn't really matter. You killed any shot you had of getting back into that game.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. So now the Mariners have to try and salvage a game in this series against the mediocre Detroit Tigers team. After, arguably their biggest series win of the year against the Phillies, against one of the best teams in baseball. The inconsistency and energy and urgency, whatever you want to call it, is incredibly concerning with this team.
Yep.
And they need to get it together, especially against these mediocre to bad teams. This is a problem. Mm-hmm. All right. Yep. So we're going to talk about tonight's game a little later on. But now we're going to talk about Julio, who is trying to work his way back. And the Mariners might have a unique way that they might deploy him in order to get him back sooner rather than later. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Game Time's last-minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Tonight you can catch all the action between the M's and the Tigers on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So Julio Rodriguez is trying desperately to get back onto the field as soon as possible, but it doesn't seem like he's there just yet. He was running the bases yesterday, and as he was trying to cut the bases, it still looked like he was kind of slowing himself down, kind of gingerly getting around the diamond yesterday. So, so it's still going to be a little ways. And now it seems like the Mariners might be considering DHing him once he gets back. Part of that is how well Victor Robles has been handling center field. So they feel like, we'll just go with Robles in center, at least for the time being, until we feel Julio is fully at 100% or as close to 100% as he possibly can be at this point in the season. And he'll just DH in the meantime so we can add some more firepower to our offense. But this is concerning. I'm not going to lie. It does seem like Julio is not right, and it seems like they're going to try and get him back even when he isn't necessarily right. They're even talking about not even sending him out on a rehab assignment, instead having him go out against the traject machine and, just hitting in the cages, and essentially that being his rehab assignment, because they don't want to risk making the injury worse. But it's like, Aren't you risking making the injury worse by putting him out on the field anyway, having him run the bases? Because like
run the bases.
Yeah, because like even if he's not playing center field, he's still got to run the bases, and obviously speed and his ability to run the bases and steal bases, that's a big part of his game.
Right. I mean, if he's not feeling confident cutting first base and going to second on a double, then how valuable is his single? Because obviously Julio's not going to be stealing bags anytime soon.
Yeah.
So like, I think this is a really weird thing too, because you kind of juxtapose it with what we talked about, where Scott's still kind of playing this like long game where it's like, oh, I don't want to use Munoz unless it's tied or we're up because, it's a long season, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, but you're willing to throw your franchise player out there 2 weeks after he suffered a high ankle sprain. I mean, this is an injury that's 4 to 6 weeks usually to get anywhere close to 100%. We're only 2 weeks in, and you're considering, sending or, putting him out there to DH, and he's got to trust that ankle when he's swinging. He's got to, trust the ankle when he's running the bases. Like, I don't know. This seems like a big risk. And, I understand that this is like we talked about in the first segment, this is a sprint now. You're in a sprint, but you still have to consider the long-term health of a player. And Julio is, your franchise, and he's 22, 23 years old or whatever. And, this is his first like extended trip on the IL. He's been on the IL before, but it's been, the minimum, and he's been back. It's been tight back and stuff like that. This is a legitimate high ankle sprain that, was going to take, average 4 to 6 weeks to start to feel good. And he's pushing it right now. We're about 2 weeks in from when he actually injured the ankle. So, it's not that concerning that he's still, not quite making the tight turn on the bases, and he's still not really sure what he can do with the ankle yet. I mean, that's probably right on line with what you would expect. Like, he's probably right where he should be in his recovery, but it's you push him and you try and take him from 50% speed to 100% speed in a couple of days without a rehab assignment or anything like that. You're really risking something here, because as bad as it would be to not have Julio until September, it would be a lot worse to not have Julio for the rest of the year. So I think, I'm not a huge fan of this. The idea that he should just DH. I mean, it's not like Julio's hitting really that well anyways this year. He had been before he went on the IL. He was starting to pick it up. And obviously, if Julio is healthy enough to hit, fine. You rather have him DH than not have him at all. But is he healthy enough to hit right now? I don't know. And by the way, we should be talking about there still should be a rehab assignment coming up, because he's missed a couple of weeks. And by the time he's even close, it looks like it's going to be at least another week.
But again, they're saying that they don't really want to do that. Like, they just want him to hit off the trajectory machine, and
this just feels like a super unnecessary risk. And like I said, I totally get why they want to try it. And playing through pain is part of being a baseball player. I get that, I really do. But this is your 23-year-old face of your franchise who kind of relies on cutting and his speed and his legs to really carry most or a lot of his value, especially this year where he hasn't done a ton at the plate, and he needs to be in center field to give you value. Well, if he's just a DH and he can't even really push off of that ankle that well and trust it, he's going to cost you bases. He's going to cost you runs because he's going to be hobbled. And that's, what if he rolls the ankle while he's playing, and all of a sudden now you're back to square one. So like, it's a pretty big risk to take. And it's not like it's highly unlikely he can do anything that's going to impact him next year, because he'll just take the winter and recover from the ankle sprain and be fine. But, you do want to be careful here, because, as fun as it would be to have Julio for like 5 games in August, you don't want him to go play the 6th game, roll his ankle again, and then his season's over.
Well, so, I guess it all comes down to, do you think he can get back to 100% by some point before the season ends, where it matters? Now, again, this kind of goes back to our whole discussion about the bullpen, where you're kind of playing for a theoretical moment, right? But this is a bit different when we're talking about handling health, and it's like, all right, is it really worth having Julio at 50, 60% right now when I could get him at 90 to 100% 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, it's tough to say. And plus, like, if I DH him now, right? Am I just eliminating any possibility that he ever gets back to 100% this year? Because even though I make the playoffs, I still want Julio to be in center field. I still want him to be able to run the bases and steal bags. And so, like a hobbled Julio in the playoffs, if you even get there, like, I don't know if that's that valuable. So, because I mean, obviously, if you're just a DH, you have to crush for it to be worth it. So the Mariners are in a kind of a tight spot with Julio. You know, they want to get him out there, and obviously his bat in the middle of this lineup would be huge. But if it's 65% healthy Julio, is that really a huge upgrade? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And so, especially right now where Haniger's still swinging the bat okay, Rayleigh has started to show some signs. Robles and Randy Arozarena had a great game last night. So like, you still have Cal is, should have had 2 home runs last night. Like you still have some good signs from your offense, even though Scooble basically shut him down, so he shuts down everybody. That's not really a huge red flag.
Well, and again, like we talked about yesterday, like you, as long as you're able to scrape together a couple of runs against Scooble, George Kirby on the mound, you would think that you would have a shot.
Nope. Unfortunately, George disagreed.
Well, and then Scott Servais disagreed. Sure.
So yeah, it's frustrating time for the Mariners, no doubt. But I don't want to see them make a rash decision, and try and force something before it's ready to go. Particularly when you're talking about the health of your 23-year-old superstar. It sucks because obviously you need Julio at some point this year if you're going to, I guess, now chase down the Astros, even though you're basically tied. It sucks. It really does. But, sometimes you do have to take the long-term view of things. And when we're talking about health, like literal health for a guy who's actually injured at this moment, I do think it's okay to take the long-term view of that, as opposed to when we're talking about the bullpen of well, this guy might not be available tomorrow if I use him tonight, but he is available tonight.
Yeah.
Julio's not available tonight. He's not available tomorrow. So, it's a different conversation. But it does. There are some parallels there that kind of make it a gray area.
All right, so let's talk about tonight's game. Bryan Woo taking the bump for the M's to try and salvage a game out of this disaster of a series against the Tigers. Go over our thoughts on that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Tigers tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Bryan Woo taking the bump for the M's in this one. The Tigers still don't know who's starting for them. Might be a bullpen day. We'll see on that. It's still TBD here with about 5-ish hours before first pitch. So Colby, Woo coming off of arguably his best start of his career against the Philadelphia Phillies last Friday. What are your thoughts on him heading into this game tonight?
Yeah, hopefully he can give you some innings. Kirby only going 5 last night and having to use 5 guys out of your bullpen, not ideal. So hopefully he can give you some innings. But this is a lineup that doesn't feature a ton of scary lefties in it. So obviously Woo is much better against righties than lefties. At least his skill set would suggest that he is. But for Woo, it's always about the fastball. Fastball command, fastball control. are you on the corners? Or are you in the middle of the plate? That's going to tell the story of Bryan Woo tonight. So as far as I know right now, there are no restrictions on Woo. Again, he did throw 90 some odd pitches last time out. He did go 7. So maybe they want to be a little bit cautious. And again, we don't know for sure. Like for all we know, Woo only has 60 pitches in him tonight. It's just hard to trust him to give you some, some length out of the rotation right now. But for him, it's going to be about the fastball. You have to command it. You have to control it. You have to put it on the corners. You can't be in the middle of the plate, even against these guys. Ask George Kirby about what happens when you're in the middle of the plate against this lineup. Ask, Jonathan Hernandez what happens when you walk guys and then you're in the middle of the plate. It's all about the fastball for him. 4-seamer at the top, 2-seamer running away or in on the hands of the righties. So I think we're going to see a fastball heavy approach from him tonight, and hopefully he's aggressive, but aggressively, on the corners and working the edges of the plate and getting some chases. Bryan Woo, it's always going to be about the fastball until we see a consistent secondary pitch. This is all about the 4-seam and the 2-seam, working ahead, getting some quick outs, and just staying on the corners, pitching all 4 quadrants, which he did very, very well in his last outing. And when he's on, that's what he does. It's fastball up and away, fastball down and in. He can touch all 4 corners with it, and it's going to be 96, 97 miles an hour. For Woo, it's always about the fastball.
Yeah. And hey, thankfully, Andres Munoz and Jimmy Garcia are more than well rested for tonight.
But only if they're up or tied.
Right. I don't really have any other thoughts on this game other than what you said. Just win. How about that? How about you beat a Tigers team that is incredibly mediocre and also missing its 2 best hitters? How about we do that? That'd be great. And how about we, show a little bit more energy and urgency tonight, given the situation?
Yeah. I mean, you win tonight. You're tied with Houston. So still in first place.
They're not playing tonight?
Nope. Houston's idle tonight. Win tonight, get you back in first place. I guess the good news is that Justin Turner was able to play yesterday.
Yep.
So looks like you may have dodged a bullet there. And there were some good signs against Skubal, in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning of last night's game. And so
it seemed like the second time through the order, they had figured something out from the first time seeing him.
Right. And again, it's only 2 runs, but Skubal's really good. And so tonight they will be facing not Tariq Skubal, but that didn't really matter on Monday. Tuesday. Now did it? Yeah. So hopefully they score early, get a little bit of a lead here. I assume we'll see Rayleigh in the lineup tonight. We could see Canzone come up. He's been really good in his rehab assignment. It's probably about time. If they want to make a move, yesterday they did send down Marlowe for Bliss.
Oh yeah, so, that was weird.
Yeah, and yet Polanco was good, Dylan Moore was good, Rivas played in that game too. So they have just kind of an extra infielder on the bench now. So I don't know what the plan is there. Canzone could be Rivas. They could send Rivas down, and Bliss is just effectively going to face lefties and be the backup shortstop for a while. They could do that. They could send down Vossler, who hasn't really played much since the acquisition of Turner. I'm still not quite sure how they get Canzone a lot of playing time right now. I would still give Rayleigh the nod over Canzone. And I mean, I guess tonight they could probably DH him and have Rayleigh play right field for Haniger or something like that. So you can find a way to get him in this lineup, but I would just watch for Canzone to get called up today. And if he is, that's going to happen in the next couple hours as we're recording this. So
yeah. And Vossler still has an option too, so It's not a matter of having to DFA him if you like him, if you want to keep him in the org.
Canzone on the 60. I don't think they ever put him on the 60.
No.
So
now he got hurt in early July, so it's only been a month.
Yeah. So Canzone probably there's no need to make a 40-man move. I wouldn't mind seeing Troy Taylor walk into the clubhouse. I think that's time to make that move. Bliss is already up. Marlowe's already down. So if they do want to go with Canzone, then I assume it would be Rivas, but it could also be Vossler, who just hasn't really gotten much playing time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez, Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Now head on over to Locked On Seahawks to get all the latest out of training camp and get ready for Saturday's preseason opener against the Chargers. From Corbin Smith and the gang, and tell them Ty and Colby sent you. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.